Senator Cotton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both. I know there's been a lot of talk about gold today. There's an old saying, worth its weight in gold, which goes back to the fact that early current coins actually were weighed. That's why peso means weight, and the British pound is called the pound, and the lira means pound, which has the same Latin root word as Libra, the digital currency that Facebook and others have proposed as well, which brings me to my point that I want to talk about with Ms. Shelton, the need for digital currency to maintain the dollar's primacy in the world. These examples are just a few of how throughout history currencies have always had the same properties, whether they're liquid, they're stable, they're stores of values, they eliminate inefficiencies of bartering, and whether or not we need to add a new property to our currency, namely that it be digital. And to be clear, I'm not talking here about cryptocurrencies or anything like that. I'm talking about a central bank digital currency, because that's exactly the direction that China intends to go with the digital yuan. China, like a lot of fragile developing economies, you might say, needs digital currencies primarily internally, because they don't have the kind of institutions that we have, whether that institution is the dollar, whether that institution is the Federal Reserve, or simply the rule of law and rights of property and contract. For the United States, we need the digital currency a little bit less, I would argue, internally, but rather to help preserve the primacy of the dollar worldwide. So, for instance, China has wide-scale use of digital payment systems inside of China, but they hope to use the digital yuan worldwide to replace the dollar as the reserve currency, with all of the economic benefits that brings to the United States, and especially the security benefits it brings to enforce sanctions. So just to use an example, China buys a lot of agricultural products from Argentina. They don't contract those and transact in pesos or in yuan, but in dollars, which again gives us great leverage in enforcing our sanctions worldwide. If we do not move to add digitization to the dollar as a feature of those timeless historical properties of currency, I worry a lot that a digital yuan could ultimately replace the reserve currency, just as we replaced the pound in the last century. So, Ms. Shelton, could you talk to us a little bit about what you on the Federal Reserve Board and what the Federal Reserve as a whole could do to help protect the dollar's reserve currency, and especially address the need to have digitization as a potential property of the dollar?
Thank you, Senator Cotton. I think that's an extremely important discussion, and I agree with your assessment. I think we're compelled to think about that. The dollar is the most important instrument of soft power that we have around the world. And yes, it is the dominant reserve currency, but we can't rest on our laurels in that regard, because as you suggested, rival nations are working very diligently to have an alternative to the dollar. And while they can't beat us as a currency, they can add features, because there is a demand for digital access to banking services, to payments. And I think it's very important that we get ahead of the curve to ensure that the dollar continues to offer the best currency in the world, the most respected, the most utilized, and we need fintech innovation to keep us going in the right direction and to be a leader instead of passively observing what other countries might do.
Yeah, and again, to reiterate, I'm speaking here primarily about the primacy of the dollar worldwide, not domestic purposes. Governor Brainerd gave what I thought was a pretty good speech last week about central bank digital currencies, and she cited some of the reasons why developing economies need it, such as high degrees of cash use and weak financial institutions and underdeveloped payment systems and the risk of inflation in domestic currencies. We don't face those nearly to the same degree. What I'm talking about is the need to have a dollar that is competitive in world markets, it's earned its position over the last century. That's why we replaced the pound, and it's maintained that position against competitors like, say, the euro, and still to this day the yuan. I don't want to see a day when we wake up and have a Sputnik moment with our currency in which we are no longer the world's reserve currency. My time has expired, but thank you both for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.